Warning: World Weary Podcast occasionally discusses mature themes and uses colorful language.
Welcome to World Weary, a podcast filled to the brim with extraordinary stories and brought to you by two extraordinary ladies. I'm the British one, Violet Starr.
I'm the American one, Cassiopeia Walker.
Oh yeah. What a week we've had.
Oof.
Last weekend we went to a surprise party.
Yep.
And you, Cassie, had the important role of distracting the surprisee. Is that the right word?
The surprisee. It wasn't a birthday party. It was a welcome back party for our friend Ella, who's dating our friend Connor. She's from Poland, so she's back and forth a lot. But yeah, we distracted her with Drag Race. RuPaul's Drag Race, one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, we had to go collect her, bring her to the home, get some Drag Race on.
Snacks, but only for an hour, then suspiciously have to go.
Yeah, and it was a bit, I was like, she must have been weirded out by the fact there was like a whole entourage of people like walking her around town. And but hopefully it did distract her.
Yeah.
She said she was truly surprised.
She was surprised.
Yeah. So that was really fun. And then last night we had another Drag Race viewing.
Yeah, I've been trying to make it a thing.
The same bunch of friends. A bit of karaoke.
Yeah,
late night karaoke.
We did late night karaoke. I have a karaoke game. That was pretty fun. That was crazy. I got some Kahlua into everybody.
Yeah, it was really good. So we've had quite an action-packed week with like work and meeting up with a lot of people this week.
Yeah.
A little bit exhausted today, I think it's fair to say. But we are still really hyped. We've been so excited about today's episode. I'm the master, so to speak, of the episode. I've picked one of my favourite topics, treasure. Treasure.
Of course, Somerset treasure.
Oh yeah, I am the treasure of my county.
Yes.
Have you ever found any treasure, Cassie?
Oh shit. Morgan has.
Oh really?
Morgan found, well, it's not really, if you consider it treasure.
Well,
he found a meteorite. I think it's,
oh,
I don't want to say the wrong word. There's different classifications for whether it's in the sky, in the ground, in space. It's the little rock on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. And he found one of those when he was a kid and sold it or something.
Oh,
I can't
sweet.
remember.
I remember when I was little and I lived in Shaftesbury in Dorset. I must have been really young, like maybe like 5 years old or 6 years old. And we found, I think one of my parents found a little meteorite in the garden.
Wow.
I think it might have just been in the soil. I'm not sure if it like fell or whatever, but someone found it, I think, in our garden. And my dad, stonemason, so he's got all the tools. So he managed to like break it in half.
Oh
so
my god, did he get superpowers?
Maybe. If those superpowers are learning to surf when you're middle-aged and I don't know, midlife superpowers. Maybe he got some kind of I don't know, like youth serum or something from that, because Dad's one of those people who hasn't really aged since he was like 30.
Yeah. Well, you look pretty much the exact same since I met you first, so that's kind of, it's been creeping me out for a while. I've had some questions.
I just have one of those weird things where I I aged so quickly as a child.
Right.
Like I looked like
so you're just
an adult. I passed as an adult who could buy alcohol at like 13 or 14. Wow. Like I've said before I'm not sure if I've mentioned it on here, but I like pretty much was full height at 13.
Wow.
I was like just under 5'8".
Yeah.
This kid in my school at one point.
Beating up everybody.
So yeah, maybe I've just stayed constant.
Did I tell you that I used to create treasure maps for my siblings as a child in the trailer park and get all the trailer park kids and they would have clues and stuff, but there'd be a treasure map with an X because I was so obsessed with like treasure stories and stuff. And I'd make everybody all day. You know how I am. I made a karaoke night happen last night because I'm so pushy, and get people to do things. Yeah, we would just spend all day, because there's not a lot to do in a trailer park in the early 90s, let me tell you what. And yeah, we'd just search for treasure. It'd usually be like a tin of just nothing, but cheese or something, but, I'd bury it. It usually was just in the back of the trailer, but I'd make them go all over the trailer park.
Cool. I love treasure hunts. We have to do an adult treasure hunt soon, but the problem is finding at the stage of life that a lot of our friends are in, no one's really got any extensive properties and gardens for us to. You need all those spaces.
Have you heard of the geolocator treasure hunt?
Like
that's creepy
GPS,
though. Like people get mad though. People near them get really fussy about
it. That's the thing where they hide stuff in like a little Tupperware box in like a landmark or like on like a bridge or
and you have to mark where you've been or something. I don't know. I'll let the listener tell us more. But
I don't really know much about it, but it sounds
I've looked it up once and it just felt more
and
creepy.
And it's all over the world, right?
Yeah.
And then you sometimes it's like a Tupperware tub and like you take an item out of it and put something in. So there's always like little souvenirs and
I think I've heard rumors that like people have been attacked at those.
Really?
I think I've heard, but this is I'm talking about late night hours on Reddit, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm trying to scare myself.
Could be the title for a future episode.
Reddit
mysterious treasure hunting. I'm sure I have told you about this actually, but the nearest thing I found to treasure was on like true treasure.
Wow.
True treasure was on an archaeological excavation. Recently volunteered at a Tudor Palace bakery on the edge of London. I think it was the first day I was there and we were like kind of learning to like excavate and dig trenches and stuff. And I found this tiny silver jewellery scale.
Oh wow.
So it looked like a little, like a sequin almost.
Oh wow.
A silver, like teardrop shaped piece of silver with a hole through the middle. It would have been part of a piece of jewellery or, you know, a kind of decoration as part of like, you know, maybe there was like a bead on it and some other stuff. Decoration on a hat or clothing or something. That was really cool and it was minute. So it was thanks to my perfect young vision that I was able to spot it. I remember the other people that were on the supervising the archaeological dig were telling me that it was the year before that another young woman had found a minute piece of gold at the same site, but literally like a grain of gold. It's like you need those good eyes to see that because you're like sifting through soil
young
with
archaeologists are so important.
Yeah, it's like literally if I hadn't seen this tiny glint of silver jewellery plate, you know, I would have just it was so small it could have just gone straight into the like spoils bucket. So I
say this about every profession, but if I could be bothered to school, that's one like if I could be bothered to go to university, that's one of those ones that I used to obsess about. Like just like imagining myself with a toothbrush, like knee deep in some dirt, like there's a dinosaur here. Like
but it's so cool to find something like just anything. It's cool to find anything on an excavation because I've hardly done any digs.
Yeah.
It was great that like literally the first time I put trowel to soil, I dug up the only bit of silver on the entire dig. You know, they found loads of other cool stuff like exquisite bits of pottery. And I mean the main thing was obviously finding the location of the bakery and the buildings, and they dug out like where the oven and stuff would have been and the chimneys and all of that. So that's cool, but yeah, it was epic to find a tiny bit of silver, a nugget of silver. My family have found cool things over the year. So I think my dad's found some like Roman coins. Yeah. No gold or silver, sadly. When my family lived in Dorchester in Dorset, so Dorchester used to be a big Roman town.
Okay.
There's a big mosaic discovered underneath all of the gardens where we lived.
Shit.
And so my parents were gardening and stuff. It's just a little small garden. They would be turning up bits of Roman tessera, like from making the mosaics.
Oh, okay.
Like the little squares that make up the
mosaic.
Right,
yeah.
Like little Roman bits and pieces.
See, I would be so hyped by that.
Super cool. So fun to live somewhere that's like got that much archaeological stuff in the ground. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that as a rookie archaeologist, those of you that don't know, I studied archaeology as an undergraduate and I also studied archaeology and cultural heritage as a postgraduate. It feels a little bit taboo to say things like I flippin' love gold and treasure because there's a huge thing in archaeology about archaeology is not Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider. You know, you have to say things like, oh, well, we actually find soil samples or possible evidence of a fire pit as equally, if not more interesting and exciting than gold coins. Or, you know, the remains of this Roman toilet is the real treasure, because it tells us so much valuable information about the lives of everyday people, you know, that kind of thing. And it's not untrue, like, I get it, because as an archaeologist, you know, you are very interested in every aspect of it and the human story behind everything. That's the important bit, and I absolutely don't equate finds with their monetary value.
Yeah, of course.
But at the same time, I don't want to feel ashamed to say I have a bias for beautiful, sparkly things.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
you know me.
Why not?
I love to wear jewelry. I love sequins. I love.
You always wear different types
opulence.
of jewelry as well.
Yeah, I love
opulence.
I like gold gilt picture frames. You know, I'm a bit of a magpie, and it's like, you know, undeniably we're all attracted to shiny stuff.
Oh yeah.
You know? And oftentimes, you know, the general public or people who are like non-experts in archaeology are going to be very interested in treasure that archaeologists find. You know, a lot of people do find a golden guinea, the coin, more captivating or like exciting than your average pottery sherd.
Yeah.
Because in a way, their value, that value of that gold coin still translates to the present. You know, so there's multiple reasons to be interested in it. You know, we know precious metals and silvers and stuff are special, and we also find them beautiful. We know they're pretty. So I do get really bothered when archaeologists get all snobby.
Shame.
And or like weary of people asking them things like, have you ever found gold on a dig? Or, you know, what's the best thing you've ever found? A lot of archaeologists often voice off that, you know, they're frustrated or tired of people doing that. I don't know, like, as someone that I really have felt like an outsider or a bit of an imposter at times in the archaeology world, I do find that attitude really disheartening. It's like, don't be so contrary. We should all be able to connect.
What gets people fascinated about it?
We all should be able to connect over this shared joy of valuable, shiny treasure. And it's like, well, if you are on an archaeological crusade to get more people interested in Roman pottery sherds or Roman toilets, then use those conversations about treasure as an entry point for that.
Yeah.
Any interest is normally good interest.
Yeah, but an interest in shiny stuff doesn't in any way compromise your ability to care overall about all the aspects you need to, and all the, like you said, human elements and their stories. I mean, when you show me that museum, my favorite piece in the entire place, I love the jewelry and the shiny stuff, but my favorite piece was that dress.
Oh, yeah, the Egyptian.
Oh, my God.
This was the... I've completely forgotten the name of it. I think it's the Petrie Museum in London. University College London. It's free if you're ever in London to go into. It's like open most weekdays, I think. And it's just a really nice collection of Egyptian finds there. And they've got this amazing dress. Like, you know, the remains of this amazing dress.
What was it made of? Like, it was like made of like almost like
beads.
a hollow, beads.
It's like it looked to look at the dress in the museum. It looks like a kind of net. It's like fishnet.
It looks
or
like
something.
hard
like
net,
string with like beads.
And you would totally be showing off every part of your body. There's no real coverage, and I loved that. It was like it's hot back then.
Who needs Topshop and Boohoo.com?
Yeah,
when you've got ancient Egyptian bead dresses.
I would wear it if I could get away with it. It was so cute. Really tiny. Really tiny.
Yeah, really small. You forget how tiny
people were so small. I'm tall to them. Like, if I went back in time, I would have stuck out like a sore thumb. 5'3" me, like a giant lady. Yeah, treasure. And
that's my mini archaeology run over. Here we go. Okay, so today's topic, treasure hunters. And I am being really brave, and I'm going to tackle literally one of my favourite mysteries ever.
Oh god, I'm so excited.
The Oak Island Treasure Mystery.
Oh, I only know it by name, but that's how famous it is, because we always tell each other the episode sort of names, like, so we don't collide, but I literally am dumb and don't know anything. So it's lucky that I can always be surprised, but I've heard vaguely of this. And when I told Morgan our topic, he was really excited when he heard that you were going to do it.
I hope I can do it justice. This is the thing, it's such a a massive story. It's still ongoing. There's so many details to it. And so I was saying to you earlier that condensing this story down into something that's going to fit into our episode, I really did feel like when Peter Jackson sat down to get the essence of Lord of the Rings into a movie script.
How do you do it?
I was like, I had the glasses out, pens, notes everywhere, abs up all over the computer. I hope you're all going to be like a mini expert, and I hope, because it's just so massive and too much for me to really do any justice. I hope you'll go away with some tantalizing questions that will make you want to research even further and come to your own decisions about it, because there's so much that I don't even understand in this. A lot of unanswered questions, a lot of contradictory points. That you come away with a lot of questions.
And of course, these kind of stories get muddled over time by retelling.
And just believe me, this is so...
it's going to be intense.
So much of it is word of mouth. Didn't get reported on till way later in the game.
Shit.
So much of it is completely unverified, things that don't make sense. It gets quite heavy in kind of scientific kind of stuff that's quite hard to get your head around if you're not necessarily an expert. So you will, for sure, come away with some things that need answering that I hope you will research and explain to me as well. Because there's a lot of stuff I didn't get, and you really need to go into
we are
detail.
By no means experts on anything. We're just gassing to y'all. So if you got anything you want to tell us, make sure you hit up our email with the info.
And I've got some great resources I'll mention at the end that you should check out if you want to do some more research on this here. People have done, way more work on this than I am. It's a very famous story. So, the Oak Island treasure mystery. Do you know where Oak Island is, Cassie?
Nope.
Actually, mainly I've been doing a lot of British stories so far, haven't I?
Yeah, a lot of British stories.
But I'm going out of my comfort zone and I'm crossing the pond. Oak Island, it's a tiny little island off of Nova Scotia, Canada. 140 acres, which isn't that much as islands go. Very tiny. It's covered in oak trees, hence the name. I believe a non-native to the area. They must have been introduced, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Anyway, it's got a lot of trees. It's a heavily wooded island. It's really close to the Nova Scotian mainland, I think. So it's only 660 feet away from the mainland. In fact, I've got a picture of it. That part there is the island, and that's a modern causeway that's been built. I mean, you could see, you could definitely see that from the mainland.
Oh, yeah.
It's not far out in the sea or anywhere, so I'll share that photo with you guys. So historically, the major indigenous people in Nova Scotia are the Micmac. I think that's how you pronounce it. There seem to be various pronunciations, so you have to let me know if I got that terribly, terribly wrong. Don't know who discovered Oak Island, but it's that close to the mainland, and clearly if the Micmac were in the area, they frickin' knew it was there. There's not much going on the island. It's literally just a bunch of trees. Europeans come over to settle in the area in the 1700s, early 1700s. French fishermen were building on the mainland, fairly close to where Oak Island is. And then in the mid-1700s, there is much more kind of major settlement in the area from European settlers. As far as I could tell at that early point, mid-1700s, no one's inhabiting the island. There's no buildings on it. People on the mainland, they know it's there, but no one's living on it. Once again, before we get into the meat of this story, I just have to super clarify that much of this information on the early phases of the treasure hunting activity on Oak Island is totally unverified. It's mostly word of mouth, settler stories that go all the way back to the 18th century. Lots of these stories only got published or picked up by newspapers way, way later on. So if you look at those reports, there are so many inconsistencies and twists and differing versions of the events. Especially from the 19th century onwards, it gets super sensationalized. And it's very hard to pick apart the fact from the fiction, just because there's so much information to cover. I've just pieced together the bits and pieces that I think are important and that I like into a kind of chronology of treasure hunting.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys can follow this.
All right, I'm ready. I'm strapped in.
So this is a treasure hunting story. Oak Island, Nova Scotia. The mystery starts with pirate lore.
Ooh.
A rumour of pirate treasure in Nova Scotia. According to the earliest European settlers in Nova Scotia, a sailor that was somehow associated with Nova Scotia, maybe he moved there. Of course, at this time, there's a lot of movement, a lot of seafaring folk. He somehow has got an association with Nova Scotia, or he goes to Nova Scotia, or he lives there. He tells that there is a treasure of £2 million buried on Oak Island. Well, why would someone say that? Why would you go around blurting out that there was a load of treasure buried on a weird little island?
You're drunk?
Well, the story goes that this sailor was dying, and he either confessed this on his deathbed. Another version of the story says that whilst attempting to actually locate this £2 million, the sailor, he was treasure hunting. He was actually attacked by another treasure hunter, which resulted in his death. He told other Nova Scotians that, by the way, I was like over on that island trying to dig up the treasure, and my rival treasure hunter enemy turned up and like beat me up, killed me. Probably the most important thing about this sailor and his tale is that by all accounts, the sailor was once part of Captain Kidd's crew. Captain Kidd, if you don't know him,
nope.
You really need to read up on your pirates.
I do.
He is one of the most famous pirates or privateers. He was a Scotsman, and he was eventually executed and gibbeted in 1701. If you don't know what gibbeting is, listen to the Haunted Decor, Haunted Furniture episode.
Haunted objects, yeah.
He was executed in 1701 at the execution dock at Wapping in London, which I've been to. We know that Captain Kidd did go around depositing his treasure.
Oh shit!
Especially in the run-up to his execution, there was a warrant out for him. I think his whole crew mutinied against him. We know that Captain Kidd actually did deposit a load of treasure when he was on the run in Long Island, or near Long Island in America.
My god.
And the Long Islanders actually were all, at the time, like renowned as like dodgy, like hide pirates. They were all in with the pirates.
Oh wow, it hasn't changed.
So it's not a totally ridiculous idea to think that Captain Kidd may have had other stashes buried elsewhere. You know, he was absolutely a very successful pirate, I believe. We know he deposited treasure, so it was very believable that he might have deposited in Nova Scotia as well. He might have buried some treasure there. But that story, which is this story from the early settlers, so the early 1700s, if you think Captain Kidd executed in 1701, we have to think about the timeline there. There were early settlers in Nova Scotia during the 1700s, big influx, I believe, around like 1750, 1760. It is possible that someone was part of the crew or close to the crew or related to someone who had been in
could have been
Captain
even
Kidd's
just a cabin
crew.
boy.
Yeah, or just someone in that pirate sphere or just the seafaring sphere that could have got that information about where Captain Kidd had potentially buried treasure. It's not until the mid-1800s that story about this possible treasure of Captain Kidd buried somewhere in Nova Scotia or Oak Island in particular doesn't get picked up into the newspaper until the mid-1800s. I think it's a Nova Scotian newspaper as well. News doesn't really travel far for a very long time with this story. As I said, at this time in the 1700s, Oak Island doesn't seem to be inhabited. There are no settlements, no buildings even on this little island. And aside from the pirate rumours, which people would definitely have believed in it because, you know, pirates were a serious thing at that point. Local settlers on the mainland in Nova Scotia who were near to Oak Island seem to have a lot of superstitions about the island.
Oh, okay.
Aside to those pirate rumours that pirates might be hanging out on the islands in the area. And there are these really old stories from these earliest European settlers in the early 1700s of people seeing strange lights out on the island, out on Oak Island. Also stories of men travelling to the island to check it out and not returning. And considering how close it is
that's a bit
to the mainland, definitely look at the picture so you can kind of an image of that in your mind, because it is very, very close to the mainland. No one's keen on hanging out there. People are very wary of it, fearful even. Certainly have superstitious beliefs about the island. It's not a good place that people are keen to visit. So around 1795 or maybe 1799, it's not very clear, a young settler in Nova Scotia who was possibly still a teenager at the time this happened, called Daniel McGuinness. He heads out to Oak Island on a boat from the mainland. We don't know exactly why Daniel decides to go there. Some stories say it was for a fishing expedition, or he was going there to hunt, some kind of prospecting. You know, some versions say maybe he was interested in building there or thinking about farming on the island. One version says that Daniel had actually been witness to some of these weird, strange lights that were occasionally seen on the island. Specifically, at one end of the island, I think it's the sort of eastern side, in the woods, he saw, one of the accounts is he saw sort of mysterious lights moving through the trees. And he wants to investigate it. So these are the possible reasons that
loads of reasons you think.
that he travelled out alone to Oak Island.
I would never
as a
go
young
alone.
man,
Why?
a young settler. On Oak Island, Daniel explores this wooded area east of the island, and he finds a clearing in the middle of it, possibly man-made, and he notices a big old oak tree with a huge branch on it about 16 feet off the ground. And what he notices about this branch is that it's been partly sawn off. So there's evidence of, some kind of human activity, someone sneaking around on the island. In this clearing, he also notices a large circular depression in the ground that's about 13 feet across.
Oh, wow. Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
So we found a weird clearing that shouldn't be there, because this, you've got to imagine this island is like just naturally forested. You know, trees don't like necessarily always make sort of perfect footpaths and spaces. This clearing stands out to him, which has got him thinking maybe this is artificially, this is a man-made clearing. A big tree which has had an isolated island. Exactly, this big tree, big branch that's been sawn off on an island that supposedly no one goes on, that people are wary of, that's got weird lights. You know, so you'd be interested to what's been going on here, who's been snooping around. But then, of course, being a Nova Scotian, being one of these early settlers, he's heard of these tales of pirate activity, rumours of buried treasure on Oak Island. So obviously, he sees this circular depression.
Yeah, he's going to start digging.
Evidence of someone doing something a bit sneaky on the island. He decides that, or he thinks, there might be something exciting buried here. This might be the rumoured treasure of Captain Kidd. So very sensibly, he rows back home to the mainland, and he rounds up two of his friends.
Oh, nice one, dude.
Two other young men, John Smith and Anthony Vaughan. And the next day, they all head out to Oak Island together. I assume equipped with
sticks or something.
Pirate booty digging tools.
Yeah.
He takes them to the clearing, and they take a better look at this tree with the branch which has been sawn off. One version of the story says that there was an old block and tackle from a ship hanging off the branch. A block and tackle, if you don't know, is basically a pulley from a ship. Other versions say that there wasn't a block and tackle, but what the lads saw was evidence on the branch, like scoring or rub marks of a pulley system or ropes having been attached to it
for
at some
cargo.
point. Yeah. for some kind of pulley system, exactly. And they also found markings cut into the tree, like weird, ambiguous markings. They're all there putting two and two together, and they're like, there is definitely some pirate booty buried here. Like, this tree is like, the markings tell you where, maybe hint to this massive circular depression in the ground. So they decide to dig a hole into this big circular depression.
Okay.
They get down 2 feet in the loose soil and they hit a layer of flagstones.
All right.
So flagstones are like the big, flat, like river stones, or like that have been squared off.
So that's not naturally going to be there.
It's very suspicious, you know. So that's a great sign. You know, it looks like they might be onto something. They remove those flagstones and they keep on digging. 10 feet down from the flagstones, they hit a layer of oak timbers. A sort of wooden platform, if you will.
Oh my god.
That is embedded into the walls of the shaft. So it's not just random bits of logs that have like fallen into the ground.
They've made like a...
It looks placed. It's in a uniform...
Oh shit.
Designed to be a kind of platform. They also notice tool and pick scrape marks in the walls of the pit.
Okay.
So evidence that someone dug this pit in the past. They also said that the earth they were digging in the pit was really loose, much looser than the surrounding soil, which was like naturally really hard packed, which points to the pit having been refilled with soil in the past. And that's why it had made a depression, because it was like loose, it kind of sunk down. So continuing on, it looks like they've found a big pit that someone has buried something in. They remove the oak timbers and they keep on digging, and they dig another 10 feet down.
Fuck.
And they hit another oak platform.
Gotta be kidding.
They clear the timber platform and they keep on digging. But when they hit about 30 feet down, they decide to call it a day. They're realising this is too big a project for them to deal with. Some versions say that these young men actually felt a superstitious dread when they got down to 30 feet, which is why they gave up.
Well, it's weird because you're digging 30 feet. How do you get down there?
Exactly.
You know?
I mean, to me, it's like, well, superstitious dread, or just the knowledge that it's getting dangerous at that depth. The shaft might collapse. You have to think about building support structures, ladders or whatever to get people in and out. It's a huge pit at 30 feet. So basically, these young men, they call it quits because digging any deeper is beyond their capabilities.
Yeah.
They go back to the mainland and they tell other people about what they found on Oak Island. They start to seek help with getting to the bottom of this potential treasure pit. Yeah. But to little avail at first, because a lot of people are still really wary and superstitious about Oak Island. Yeah. And the rumours of sort of piracy and this pirate lore makes people a little bit fearful. Maybe these stories about lights and people not returning from the island, you know, people going missing. People are very wary. There's not great interest in going there and digging a big pit. McGuinness, Smith and Vaughan, they kind of seemed to potter about on Oak Island a bit. The pit was caving in and eroding, so they refilled most of it, I think. But John Smith, I'm pretty sure it's John Smith, he buys the land on Oak Island where the pit is located, or he buys up some land. Yeah. I think maybe some sort of the other young men or their relations also take an interest. People start to buy up plots on the island.
Just in case.
So that all happened the very end of the 1700s, 1795 to 1799. At some point there, that this is when they made that initial investigation of the island, and these three young men had a go at digging what they believed was a money pit. By 1802, the young men had by then made contact with a group of about 30 Canadian and Nova Scotian businessmen called the Onslow Company.
Oh, God.
So these businessmen hear the lad's story and they decide it sounds very likely that there is big pirate treasure, a big stash on Oak Island. You know, it must have been convincing enough at that point. Yeah. And this is sort of what adds to the validity of some of these rumours. I would be semi-convinced if
they were like, oh, there are wood planks in this. Like, it makes a good story
people
already.
Remember Captain Kidd. They remember all the kind of dodgy seafaring activities. you know, there was American Revolution and the invasion of Cuba and 7-Year War and all of that in the mid 1700s. People were doing sneaky stuff. Yeah. People were doing things like stealing treasure and looting fortresses and ships
easy to believe, for
zipping around all over the place. They, you know, this company really believed in it, and they invest money into going there and digging up the treasure. I guess they make some kind of deal with the young men originally discovered and dug the pit, or they have some sort of collaboration going on, like, you know, we'll split a percentage of the treasure with you. So the Onslow Company sail out to Oak Island from Nova Scotia. They locate the pit that McGuinness, Smith and Vaughan excavated, and they continue digging the pit down to a depth of 90 feet.
Wow.
Don't imagine that the investors were doing hard work. No. I'm pretty sure, presume they're paying like a bunch of workers to do the actual manual labour part of like digging this giant pit. Anyway, as they dig, they find the same oak timber platforms every 10 feet.
That's weird.
Yeah. And they also find beach stones, apparently with markings carved into them.
See, my initial thought was that if there's a bunch of platforms and there were Micmac ages ago, that it might just be like the island was utilized as a special thing where you need a platform, and because of weather and stuff like that, they just keep building more platforms as the island grows. That would be my guess. And that is, I don't know.
Yeah, that's it's a potential theory for sure. I've definitely heard like a similar argument, but we'll get more into that.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, it's fine. So as well as timber platforms and these beach stones apparently with carvings in them, also find layers of charcoal. They find a kind of putty substance, like a water sealant putty, in between the oak timbers that make the platforms and just in layers in this pit. And they also find loads of coconut fibres, like a kind of, it's like a coconut wool, I suppose, made of coconut. These finds are really, really exciting for the Onslow Company. Why would they be so excited about layers of charcoal?
Yeah.
Apparently, an old method of sucking fresh air down into like mine shafts or like tunnels underground.
Oh, shit.
You create a chimney and you have like a fire, and it's something to do with the hot air going up the chimney. And basically you could draw fresh air down into the mine. So that points to, this is how they interpreted it anyway. It was like, okay, so this is like serious underground activity going on, like people really digging tunnels or
these
mine
pirates
or
are
something.
really, really working hard to like hide that treasure.
The putty substance, well, has to be man-made, doesn't naturally occur like that. It's interesting that it is sort of, I think, in between these oak timbers, sort of sealing these platforms. Yeah. They also recognise it as a kind of putty that's used for waterproofing old ships and boats. Okay. The coconut fibres, firstly, in Nova Scotia, they're a long, long way from any coconut trees. Yeah. You know, the nearest, like the Caribbean or
I'm
like
just
South
thinking
America.
Oak Island, and I keep forgetting we're in Nova Scotia. Like.
So the coconut fibres in particular look kind of like a brown wool or something that you like might stuff a mattress with. I'll share a picture of it somewhere. Yeah. But apparently it was used in old ships as something called dunnage, which is basically padding or matting that used to secure cargo in place in a ship. All of this is very, very exciting to this treasure hunting company. Yeah, because
like, pirates have been
evidence,
here.
People being here, ships, some kind of digging, mining evidence. And in addition to all this, around the 90-foot mark in the pit, they recover a large, heavy, mysterious stone with symbols, aka a secret code, carved into the underside of the stone. So they're digging down, hit a stone, lift it up, the underside has got weird symbols carved into it.
Weird.
Okay, so they find this big stone. So at this point, we've got a big pit.
Huge pit.
Huge pit.
A pit that I don't believe drunken pirates would dig, but let's keep going.
So big pit, layer of flagstones. You go down every 10 feet, a layer of oak timbers, an oak timber platform that appears to be like going into the walls of the pit to kind of support it. Yeah. This waterproofing putty substance that is likened to the stuff that you paint onto a ship to waterproof it. Layers of charcoal and coconut fibers.
Oof.
And then
Pirate cocktail.
a big weird rock, supposedly with a secret code on it. Clearly, the Onslow Company are going to be super excited about the discovery. You know, the pirate treasure can't be far off now. Maybe that stone says in pirate code, keep digging 2 meters and the box of gold is underneath here.
Yeah.
You know, it's not far off. So
it's always one shovel more.
yeah, exactly. Just one more. So they tried to dig deeper. I think there's about 100-foot mark.
Wow.
But suddenly, the pit, it starts to flood and it actually fills up, I think, with 60 feet of water.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is an island, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So they try to dig a secondary shaft alongside the pit, and then they're going to try and tunnel into the pit or underneath the pit to get at the treasure without filling up with water. But of course, it kind of fills up with water as well.
Oh no, yeah.
And
They're screwed now.
It floods. So the Onslow Company, they give up, they pack up, and they go home.
Yeah. What can you do?
But they do have this big, spooky stone with what appears to be a secret code inscribed into it. Someone copies the symbols onto paper, and this gets sent out. They copy the secret code on the stone. They put it on paper, it gets sent out, people try to decipher it. The stone kind of travels around, so at some point, John Smith, one of the original men that helped kind of discover...
He definitely didn't inscribe that stuff on the stone.
He actually installs the stone into the fireplace of his house that he builds on Oak Island.
Nice.
And then I think at some point it gets displayed at a book bindery or something, and then it disappears. We don't know what happened to the stone. Someone, I think a professor of languages maybe, they reckon they'd cracked the code.
Okay.
But they said that the code says 40 feet below, £2 million are buried. But in more recent times, it's been agreed by code-breaking experts that the inscription is just a hoax or a fraud secret code, that it doesn't really add up. Some people who saw the stone, in this guy's house or at this book bindery later on, claim that the stone didn't even have any markings on it at all. It was just a plain old rock. So the stone seems like a hoax, but maybe, a lot of people have speculated as to whether the Onslow Company needed to come up with something to keep interest or funding going.
Yeah.
They've got almost 100 feet, they haven't found anything, so it's okay, let's throw a rock with a secret code in it to keep enthusiasm, keep interest in our project going. So the Onslow company leave empty-handed, except for this big old fake stone, and the dig gets halted until years later in 1849, when a new company of investors is formed called the Truro Company. They go out to Oak Island, the original pit is re-excavated, but once again, down at the 80, 90 feet mark, it floods, and the pit fills up with water. So they get in this massive drill machine.
Oh, okay.
This is mid-1800s, so it's a steampunk drill. And they drill boreholes down into the pit, I think through the water. I don't know, I'm going to assume they're bucketing out the water a bit at this point, or pumping it out somehow. But I'm assuming they're still pretty wet down there.
Yeah.
So they drill these boreholes down into the pit to see if they hit anything cool, and determine whether or not there is some treasure down below this 100 feet mark. So they drill down to around 100 feet, and then they drill through a load of spruce timbers.
Weird.
Then layers of oak wood, some metal in pieces, is what it's described, bits of metal, more spruce timbers, and then they hit 7 feet of clay.
What the fuck?
So basically what I think's happening was when they would take the drill, it was I think a kind of screw shape, a coil shaped drill. I'm not 100% sure, but essentially they're taking a sample back out on the drill, and it was bringing up wood and pieces of metal, and also things more coconut fibers. I think there are claims that they found some bits of gold chain, or a coin, or a piece of gold or something, but it's not verified, and I'm not sure if that's the bits of metal in pieces that they are referring to that are like found on this drill sample. And a lot of people suggest that, again, it would have been worth their while to say, we found a bit of like gold link chain or a coin to keep investors and interest enthusiastic and funding for the project coming in. So now the Truro company decide they're going to dig another new shaft a bit northwest of the original pit, and to then try and tunnel in underneath the original pit to get at where they think this treasure and these timbers and metal that they've drilled through are. But what happens? Of course, the new shaft also floods with water. But this time, though, they actually notice that the flood water in these pits is actually rising and falling with the tide cycle.
Okay.
So it's connected to the sea.
Yeah.
They have a new plan of action to figure out how the seawater is flooding into the pit and see if they can remedy it somehow, they can stop it. And they check out the beaches and the coastline of the island, and they investigate a part of Oak Island called Smith's Cove, which is like a big old cove, I think on the south side of the island. And at Smith's Cove, they discover what appears to be a tunnel or drainage system that floods seawater inland to the island. So like when the tide comes in, the water goes into these like tunnels.
Okay. Is it a natural tunnel system?
I believe so. I believe so. But I mean, that's been debated, let's say. And this again is like one of those things I don't totally understand. You need to do, I think you need to get in some really deep, detailed research here to fully get that. And like, don't have time for this episode. But definitely, if you guys are super interested and want to research, you can should be able to find more clear evidence on what exactly is going on with these tunnels or drains, whether they're natural or there's evidence they're man-made. I seem to think they could be natural. At Smith's Cove, they discover what appears to be this sort of tunnel system or drainage system that's essentially flooding the pit. When they go down a certain level in the pit, it floods, and it almost seems to them like it's a kind of booby trap.
Yeah,
so you hit a certain point, you lift up, you clear the wrong water-sealed platform, and the whole thing floods. So it's possible evidence of this like genius level engineering going on, which is intriguing everybody. They also apparently find a kind of matting or like layer of coconut fibres, this coconut wool, under the beach surface at Smith's Cove.
Weird. Which
is kind of interpreted as like it's been done on purpose to siphon seawater into these tunnels. I'm not 100% sure. If you get really deep into this, let me know. Let me know about that. So the Truro company focuses on trying to shut off this flood tunnel system, but it keeps failing because every time they build a kind of barrier over this tunnel drainage system, the tide breaks the barriers. And they're running out of money by this point to fund the treasure hunt. So they have this one last ditch attempt at the pit again by digging yet another new shaft, even deeper, and trying to tunnel under and below the original pit to where they think the treasure could be. And they do this, and the bottom of the original pit collapses.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And so there's water, it's flooded, it's a mess. The Truro company speculate that when the bottom of the original pit collapsed, the treasure must have fallen through the new shaft into some big void or cave down there. So all of that, these like weird spruce timbers and bits of metal and stuff that they found, that they drilled through, that whatever that chunk of stuff was, it's fallen through below into some kind of void. They've used up all their funds, and so the Truro company gives up, they hang their hats up, and they go home. And from this point on, Oak Island's treasure kind of starts to become famous. There's a lot more reported on. People start publishing accounts from sort of mid-1800s on. There's more newspaper reports. It's becoming well known. So 10 years after, in 1861, Truro company is gone. Seems people have been sort of buying up more land on the island. There's a couple of cottages, I think, are being built at this point or have been built. And from here on, I think there are people living on the island, or at least temporarily or seasonally. So we need to bear that in mind from this point on.
Yeah, people live there.
Yeah, people living there. It's not just a totally uninhabited island of trees. A new company called the Oak Island Association decide to re-excavate the original money pit. It's now called the money pit.
Oh, God.
They dig more shafts. They reckon they hit one of these like flood drain tunnel things because everything's getting filled up with water. It's all flooding. Some of the wooden platforms in the pit have like collapsed. Everything's dropping deeper into the ground. And they estimate that the treasure that the Truro company supposedly hit, or whatever this interesting nugget of things were deep in the ground, they think that has fallen like way deep down, like underground. They think there might be a big cave or a void under the island.
Jeez.
They use steam engines, so they get steam engines and equipment over to the island to power pumps to pump the water out of the pits.
They're really determined.
So these are
companies.
these really old, like mid-1800s steam engines, and very sadly a worker actually dies because one of the engine boilers explodes, which happened a lot back then. So there's already a bit of tragedy. They create some more shafts to try and pump water out. They try to shut off these flood tunnels at Smith's Cove. Everything fails. People are refusing to go down into the pit. Water is leaking through everywhere. They actually get some mining inspectors. They come out, they take a look, and say the pit is like too unstable, it's way too dangerous now.
Yeah.
The Oak Island Association run out of money, so their project is abandoned yet again. A few years later, 1866, surprise, surprise, what happens?
No, a company forms.
Another group forms. This time they're called the Oak Island El Dorado Company, or the Halifax Company. And by this point, though, Oak Island is like riddled with like holes, collapsing shafts, like this money pit area is like a mess. The original pit is like unstable, it's eroded, it's flooded, it's caving in, it's a flipping mess basically.
Yeah.
And none of their plans work. The Halifax Company drills some little exploration holes, but other than a bit more coconut fibre and like a bit of wood, they don't turn up anything interesting. And once again, the project is abandoned.
Oh my gosh, they're dropping like flies.
Another group of treasure hunters turn up in 1869. They ship some like steam pumps and drilling or like boring equipment to Oak Island. And surprise, surprise, they don't succeed either. And sadly, one of their workers dies falling into a shaft.
Oh no, sweetie.
But they do find, or supposedly find, some little scraps, tiny pieces of sheepskin parchment.
Oh, weird.
With little bits of, ink alphabet on them. It's like a W and like a V or something, which I think they pull out in these drilling or boring samples. Also, what they decide to do is they tip a load of red paint down into the original pit and see where the water goes. And they find about 3 exit tunnels or holes on the island that connect the water in the pit
just Smith's Cove
to the sea. So I don't think just Smith's Cove, or it's kind of 3. Smith's Cove is quite a large cove. Maybe it was 3 exit holes at Smith's Cove or different parts of the island. I'm not sure. You can probably find that information somewhere if you're so inclined to research that. So they find that, but they also give up. No more treasure hunters. 1909, the Old Gold Salvage Group, represented by Captain Henry Bowden, have a shot at finding the Oak Island treasure. They clear out the original pit, and they even send divers down. So this is 1909, remember. Our technology is slightly better. They drill up the island, but to no avail. No treasure. They check out Smith's Cove, but they didn't find any solid evidence of, like, pirates having messed around with the beach or, like, tunnelling. One of the previous treasure hunting companies, I think it was the Truro Company, had said they had found, like, these man-made drains and, like, a rock with a big rusted ring bolt on it. So, like, evidence of some kind of activity or, like, ships having been there. But Captain Bowden, he didn't find any of that. He didn't find this like rock with a ring bolt. He didn't find these drains. Couldn't find any evidence of this sort of man-made activity at the cove. So that's a fail. Captain Bowden leaves. Fun fact, though, is that your old President Roosevelt, he was part of the Old Gold Salvage Group.
Really?
And apparently he remained interested in Oak Island and like all future treasure hunting developments for like the rest of his life.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't really know anything about him, but apparently that kind of adds some weight to the seriousness with which the Oak Island treasure legend was being taken, that someone who's a president was like heavily invested in the story. You know, it was
find out what happens.
Yeah, it was taken very seriously. More years pass until 1928. Oak Island is back in the news again. The New York Times publishes an article on the treasure mystery, and this is the ill-begotten pirate treasure of Captain Kidd, which inspires a guy called William Chappell, I think, or William Chappell, to visit in the 30s, and he digs a shaft close to where the original pit was thought to be. No pirate treasure is found, but he does find a Cornish miner's pick, some kind of anchor, and an axe. But they can't date them, and by this point there have been so many people digging up the island. There's a lot of like, there's even some like small treasure hunters that I can't mention in this because they didn't really do anything, or they're not really recorded. I'm just kind of going with the biggest treasure hunting groups that have been there. But the whole place is riddled with holes. People have been messing around trying to look for this treasure. So it could just be that these tools are left over from one of the other treasure hunters. After William Chappell, another guy who reads the news article called Gilbert Hedden, who I think is like a kind of super fan. He was like a super fan of the Oak Island treasure. He like collected books and stuff on it. Yeah, he was a fanboy. He purchases the southeastern end of the island, and he has a go at finding the treasure as well, but to no success. Then it's the war. Things go kind of quiet until the late 50s, when a man called Robert Restal, along with his teenage son and another man called Carl Grazer, who was a kind of work partner of his, they sign some kind of contract with one of the Oak Island landowners or tenants, and they go over to try and solve the mystery once and for all. They're like obsessed, like dedicated to figuring out what's going on this island. So in 1965, Robert and his team, they tried to block one of these drains at Smith's Cove. I think what they do is they dig like a huge shaft down in this drain or like tunnel that channels the seawater in and out, and they like kind of dig down in it, I guess, to like move the water away to stop it going all the way to the pit. They're trying to stop the water getting and flooding the pit, basically.
I just wouldn't even know where to begin with that kind of stuff. So people like that always amaze me. Like, oh, let's do this to try and plug it here, to do this. It's just insane.
It is, absolutely. It's so much to get your head around. So they dig this huge shaft down, I think, to redirect the seawater. But whilst Robert's down in the shaft, he actually gets... he's overcome by hydrogen sulfide fumes, which often kind of like naturally occur, especially in mine shafts underground, and he becomes unconscious.
Oh no, Robert!
His son tries to rescue him, but he also becomes unconscious because of the
Robert
fumes.
Jr.
Carl Grazer and two other men, they go down there to try and rescue Robert and his son. They all start to succumb to the fumes. And it ends up being a man who was just visiting the site, not even part of the treasure hunting team. He was just there taking a look. He actually ends up being the only person to be able to go down there in the shaft on a rope to try and rescue them. But sadly, he only managed to rescue one man, a guy called Andy DeMont. And sadly, the other four, so Robert, his son, Carl Grazer, and another man called Cyril Hiltz, all die in the shaft.
And it's so sad when things like that happen, when a lot of people die trying to rescue. So many stories like that.
And this thing with like all this treasure hunting, it's so dangerous. You know, digging these huge shafts. I think there's actually like a memorial on the island now of all the people that have like died trying to like get to the treasure. So a tenant of the island builds a causeway to the island, like a road connecting the island to the mainland. I think this is in the like late 60s. And they actually get this like giant 70-foot crane over onto the island to like properly dig out. Like we've got 1970s technology. Let's get in here. But nothing exciting is found, even with the giant crane. 1967, a new syndicate called the Triton Alliance.
Oh, here we go.
Is formed between...
They're ready for the sea.
Yeah, a whole bunch of treasure hunters, investors, people who've got like a long-running association with Oak Island, like landowners, former tenants of the island, and they... Basically a whole bunch of people with an interest in the Oak Island treasure. And they purchased most of the island. They bore a 235-foot shaft on the island to search for the treasure that they believe has fallen through the original pit into a cave system or a void. They lower cameras in to where they think this void is, and this is very difficult to verify. They claim to have seen things on the cameras, and I think there's like photos of it or like some recording that they said, the people that were there at the time said it looked like chests, human remains, tools, like wooden structures, and stuff that they could see in this void. But when you look at the photos, I think, or whatever evidence they did have from the cameras, you can't really see anything. Yeah. It's very, very grainy. Yeah. You can't clearly see like a skull floating past or like an open chest of treasure. So that's a bit iffy. Yeah. It's a bit iffy. Then this giant shaft that they've made, it collapses. No! And the excavation is abandoned. They run out of money. The Triton Alliance, they run out of money. It all goes a bit sour. There's dispute over land ownership. And this goes on through to the 90s. Wow. So there's no real big-scale treasure hunting happening because there's a lot of legal mess, it seems, shifting around, you know. So in 2006, two brothers...
My graduation year.
Oh, yeah. Two brothers called Rick and Marty. I think their surname is Lagina, maybe Lagina. Maybe. I really don't know. They buy into a company called, or do a kind of, make some kind of deal with this company called Oak Island Tours, which I think is like originally owned by some of these landowners at Oak Island from the Triton Alliance. Yeah. You know, by this point there's quite a network of people who are invested in Oak Island.
Yeah, there must be a mess.
Have an interest in it, own a company, own some kind of rights. The legal stuff is so complicated for this with like treasure acts. They've got like their own treasure act on Oak Island. It's very complicated. So again, I can't enlighten you on that today. Yeah. But do go out there and research it. So there's all these people invested there, all this complication with all these old companies and landowners. But anyhow, Rick and Marty get in, they sort of buy into this company or make a deal with them. Another company kind of buys up some land, and basically these new companies and investors kind of get together and they resume the treasure hunt at Oak Island. Yeah. So from 2014, a reality TV show actually starts following Rick and Marty and some of these other treasure hunters or kind of investors that are hunting for the treasure. It's hard to verify. I'm really quite sceptical about some of the things that they claim to find on the island during this TV show, but they have supposedly found some interesting stuff. They found brooches, I think with like metal detectors. Okay. They found like a bone fragment. Found a 17th century Spanish coin in a swamp on the island, which then was like proof that someone was like messing around on the island way before even the earliest European settlers had got into the area. They found some like more old coins, like bits of loose change basically, little bits of like old military paraphernalia, like a gold button. But a lot of these finds have been kind of explained away. Yeah. Because, for example, some of all this like these little bits of military paraphernalia and stuff, they actually found them on land that had been settled on and lived on by a British man who had once been military personnel somewhere. So it's like, if you dig up the old, like, retired military specialist garden, you're probably going to find some, like...
Yeah, you're going to find that shit.
Paraphernalia. So honestly, I'm a little bit skeptical about some of the artifacts that they find. But if you're interested, then you can see it all in this all TV show.
Yeah, quote-unquote evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the kind of chronology of the major treasure hunting on Oak Island. So what the hell is going on Oak Island? We've got this, what has been interpreted as a super complex, genius piece of engineering of this pit, which with like flood tunnels that work as a kind of booby trap.
Mystery cave underneath that suck up.
Exactly. And then these, going all the way back to this area, this remote, isolated, not heavily populated, cold, desolate-y kind of area with all this pirate lore and rumours of pirate treasure, dying sailors saying there's £2 million buried on that island.
Yeah, it's just not enough for me to be like, it wouldn't be enough for me to spend money on digging. Especially if there was like 8 companies before that tried. But God bless the people that do try these things. In the 2014 one, do they have like those geological, like they have computer programs and stuff where they can sort of like scan the ground, can't they? Looking for stuff?
Like geophysics and stuff. Like, so I think they're utilising everything, every technology known to man currently. Like,
it's just for me, I can't get past the idea of my stereotype in my head of a bunch of drunken pirates trying to build an elaborate 100-foot deep
This is where it
to
falls
hide
apart.
gold that they need to jump in and get if they really need it. They can't have a team of 30, 40 people. If it takes 40 people to find it, there's like crews worth of people. But if you get any kind of gold, everyone is a mag.
I'm going to stop you there. Okay, so I'm going to go through now the theories or some of the theories anyway, that have been
I've been sitting on my hands like thinking about, like,
exactly.
my brain's
so we can really
nuts.
then we can feel free to really get into picking these apart. So one of the theories about the kind of this genius engineering part is the pit booby trapped with these flooding tunnels, or something to do with these like sealed wooden platforms and whatnot. A lot of that has been kind of explained away by like the debunkers as natural stuff that's just been misinterpreted. The geology of Oak Island apparently means that there's a bunch of naturally occurring sinkholes, caves, wood and stuff getting washed around, things getting washed up. This whole thing with the flooding pits apparently is natural. It's something to do with like the way that like the fresh water interacts with the tide.
Okay.
And it's a small island, so I can kind of see how it wouldn't take that much for like seawater to kind of get inland through like tunnels or something. The other thing is, everyone has to question, for example, if this is Captain Kidd's treasure, were a bunch of pirates capable of engineering
I love pirates.
This flood tunnel system? And if pirates, say someone believes that this is an engineered, booby-trapped treasure pit, then maybe it wasn't pirates, maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's something else.
Aliens. Sorry.
There's also kind of other theories explaining all of this away. Some people have theorised that actually the original money pit might have just been like an old tar kiln.
Okay.
So maybe like a ship or something's like parked up, or it was used very briefly to like fix some boats or something.
Yeah.
Another theory is that this was all just a massive hoax. That maybe some like boys dug a big pit and then put weird stuff in it.
Yeah.
But it seems like such a huge effort for a hoax that takes fucking hundreds of years to
Unless
resolve.
the fines were all bullshit in the first company or so. Yeah.
One of my favourite theories is that did someone already find the treasure and keep quiet about it? Who's to say, like, the Onslow Company or the Truro Company didn't actually find the treasure, but they don't want to share it out.
Yeah,
so they're like, sadly we didn't find anything, but we did find this weird stone with symbols on, but no treasure. Sorry, we run out of money, we're going to have to go home.
Yeah.
Like, or maybe even the boys that discovered it in the first place, the first excavators of the pit. Maybe they did find something and they just kept quiet. So what if there is some kind of buried treasure on the island? What is it? Who put it there? And there are so many theories as to what was or is buried there. So, of course, the sort of most famous theory about the treasure is that this is the treasure of a pirate, probably Captain Kidd, who's possibly using the island as some kind of bank.
Yeah.
Or a place to just hide a ton of treasure because he knew he was on the run.
Yeah, knew he was on...
You know, he had a warrant after him. Another idea is that it was actually Edward Teach, aka Blackbeard. Okay. Who apparently said that he buried his treasure somewhere really hard to find, where like only Satan knew where it was. Which is like, duh, of course, you're not gonna like say, I found somewhere really easy to find. Is where I buried my treasure. Some say there is like a curse on the island, maybe connected to the pirate treasure.
Where people believe things easily.
Exactly. That a certain amount of people must die or will die before the treasure will be found. Okay. So if we think back to all these accidental deaths of treasure hunters, I think it's so far 6 people have died already.
Oh wow.
Hunting for the treasure. And I think the curse is, someone says it's like 7 or 11 people, something like that, must die before the treasure will be found.
Oh shit.
It's been proposed that Spanish sailors buried treasure from a wrecked galleon there. And a lot of people have kind of looked at the timeline of this as well to think about what could have been buried on the island, what the treasure could be. So people have looked at what was going on in that area, who was out at sea doing dodgy stuff, moving loot and money and treasure around in the mid-1700s in the sea. So one idea is that British troops might have been secretly stationed there during the American Revolution. Okay. Maybe they hid some kind of treasure there. That would have been 1760s-ish, American Revolution, so it kind of makes sense. Another is that British Marines, so during the invasion of Cuba, which was also the 1760s, maybe the British hid a load of loot that they'd taken from Cuba and hidden it on the island. Someone also has said, oh, well, it's clearly French army engineers hiding treasure from the British. So during the 7 Years' War, I think like the British, which is again 1760s, the British go over and like invade a load of French forts in like Canada or somewhere like that. So the French were hiding their treasure away. Then we get into things like people who think that Sir Francis Bacon, if you don't know who that is, Wikipedia him, they think he's the actual author of Shakespeare's works. Okay, yeah. They think that there are manuscripts that prove that Francis Bacon was basically Shakespeare's ghostwriter and that they are buried on Oak Island. And that's what the treasure is. Another theory is that the Rosicrucians, Wikipedia it, led by Sir Francis Bacon,
oh my gosh,
built a secret vault on Oak Island to store precious artifacts and scripts.
Well, they've done flooded it by now.
There are theories about Freemasonry and Masonic markings and stuff on Oak Island. There's lots of theories on these weird boulders and marks on the island that people believe to be some kind of code or something. So people have made like maps of
the different symbols,
like boulders and things on the island.
Oh, I see.
And they think there's one with like a carving or that have been shaped in some way, so that they think there's something to do with Freemasonry. Or like the Masonic kind of order. Another theory is that the Knights Templar have hidden the Holy Grail and other sacred biblical treasures on Oak Island. Aztec gold is hidden there. Ancient mariners have something to do with the island. Gold from North Africa has been stashed there. Literally just like any possible treasure that anyone can come up with. And finally, a really popular theory now is that Marie Antoinette's famous missing jewels are buried there. So the story goes that in 1789, an angry mob marched on the Palace of Versailles, and one of Marie Antoinette's maids is instructed to flee to London with a load of jewels and treasure. She then goes to Nova Scotia and gets the French Navy to bury the treasure on Oak Island.
I'd be like, remember when I used to be your maid and now I have a bunch of jewels?
Exactly. And in 2017, the treasure hunters on Oak Island, using a metal detector, apparently found a 500-year-old brooch containing a large garnet.
Okay.
Which apparently kind of backs up this theory that this is like a jewellery stash that's been hidden on the island. But I mean, it could just be pirate stash. Who's to say pirates didn't... I mean, they of course would have stolen some brooches. Why does it have to be Marie Antoinette? But yeah, that's the kind of most tantalising evidence, is this supposed brooch that they found. So yeah, to wrap it up, Oak Island is one of my favourite mysteries of all time. There's so many directions that this legend goes into, like so many possibilities and explanations, theories, and as a story, it just has everything. Like buried treasure,
failure,
pirate lore, spooky lights, deaths, a curse, booby-trapped, like, pits.
It's insane.
It's got everything. So having listened to the chronology of the treasure
I've never heard this story either, like...
What's your verdict on Oak Island Mystery with what I've given you?
I think some Micmacs, maybe use the island a bit here and there. You would utilize it, check it out, see what's on there as human curiosity goes. Abandoned it because it's too much, not worth the upkeep. And then some stories got woven by some very bored, isolated people, and it got blown out of proportion. Some little young boys tricked some people into giving them a good job for a few years. Yeah. And it's been escalating ever since.
Well, what a great way to attract money to like a remote island that you think, I could build a farm here. How could I get some money or rent my farm out as a B&B in the summer?
I think it comes down to a mixture of human greed, curiosity, superstition, mixed with a fantastic story that somebody somewhere told once and it got blown out. Because it makes sense that pirates would hide things somewhere, but to be honest, they are also equally good at refinding their shit and grabbing it and going. And I just don't think... If anybody found the treasure, it'd be long gone. I know it's hard to keep lips sealed when it comes to treasure. I just... For some reason, my inner skeptic is saying there's no treasure there. It's just too much of a pain in the ass. 100 foot of elaborate tunnel systems? Come on.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, for me...
Or aliens. That's my other theory.
We can always fall back on aliens. For me, I mean, honestly, I don't know about any of... I don't believe in the genius engineering level part of it. I think that's just misinterpreting natural features of the island. And that's natural phenomena that's just been completely misinterpreted. But I think that, or I'd like to think, that the pirate treasure part of it could be possible. There's this
it's cute
kind of semi-documented lore. We know that pirates like Captain Kidd did seek out weird, crummy, isolated places to stash their treasure. We know for sure he did stash treasure on islands. There's a reason we've got this stereotype about the little treasure island that pirates go, which is uninhabited. You find a spit of land and you mark an X underneath the palm tree or something. I mean, this also makes me think about how would I go about hiding treasure. Say I'm in the position that maybe Captain Kidd was, where you have a crew have mutinied against you. There's a warrant out for your head.
Yeah.
You've got to get rid of your £2 million. How would I go about hiding my treasure? Well, I certainly wouldn't do some kind of huge, insane engineering project which needs tons of people involved.
You want to go somewhere, little mounts.
You get in and get out.
Yeah.
You find a sneaky, hidden, isolated, rubbishy little place. You don't create a big scene or draw attention to yourself by having loads of people there in a big old ship. You leave behind... You don't leave behind any evidence of being there, you know what I mean? Like, if you had 30 or 40 people there helping you build this complicated, booby-trapped treasure pit to hide your money in, you're going to leave a load of evidence. People need somewhere to live, you need to build shelters, you need
true.
fires, someone would have...
Shit pits.
Exactly, that's not, that, someone might notice that, they might pick up there's some kind of weird activity going on this tiny island. How many people would it take to do all that engineering, all of that building? Because you only want, if you're in that position where you're on the run, you got a mutiny crew.
Yeah.
You have to try and... You don't want, like, 30 people knowing where you've built this treasure and exactly how to get it and go off and tell everyone else and come and dig it out themselves again. You only want a couple of people at most. Your most trusted...
If that's the case, you'd expect to find dead bodies where he killed the crew or killed somebody with the secret. Like, I don't know, you'd expect to see bodies as well.
Absolutely. You know, you only want a couple of people at most knowing about where your treasure is hidden and how you've hidden it. So if it is there, I think there was some treasure there. You know what I think is that I really think someone came in,
nicked it,
and found it. I think someone, maybe one of the early treasure hunters, they found the treasure and they kept quiet and they just said, "Oh, didn't find it."
Or maybe some pirates that knew Captain Kidd,
or someone else who's completely undocumented came in and already taken the treasure.
Yeah, someone
somehow.
smart.
You know, maybe those boys, when they discovered that pit, maybe there had been someone there before who had found the treasure pit.
Maybe 20 foot down, and then or a certain amount down, but only built platforms to be able to get it out, kind of thing, or something random.
Exactly. You know, maybe there was some kind of like mine there already, or something, some kind of activity, and pirates had used that as a great place to hide the treasure and refill it. Who knows? But that's what I would put my money on, I think, is that someone has already found the treasure and kept quiet. Because, you know, I could believe that pirate would go over there and just dig a pit, not a crazy pit.
And if it was back then the currency is still relevant, do you think? Like, here's the thing, if you find £2 million, and it's in pounds at that time, is it what were pounds made of? Like, there's like...
that would have been insane. It would have been insane.
And you just think there would be evidence that those were back in circulation, or if it was after a certain date, it would be obvious that they're found. But if it was early on, right at the start, it would just be secreted away and used as common currency.
Exactly. Yeah.
There'd be no way to trace it, really.
You just melt it down or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's what I think. I think that's what I'd put my money on, is that maybe a pirate buried some treasure in a much more simple fashion.
Yeah.
And someone found it, and
it's gone.
That's why it's gone. That's why there's nothing there.
In fact, maybe those strange lights that those boys saw were people fucking taking the treasure and fucking off.
Little boatloads of it, sneaking it away from the island. So yeah, that was the Oak Island treasure mystery.
That's crazy.
If you want to find out more about Oak Island, because I'm sure you've got a lot of questions and there's a lot to fill in, there's so much I've had to miss out, because there's just so much to this story and so many different theories and interesting tangents and details that you can go down that I can never fully cover.
A little spiral.
Exactly. This has very much been the light version of the story, but there are so many great books out there. We'll link some. There's a documentary series called The Curse of Oak Island, which follows the current treasure hunters, which you should check out. Although I'm quite skeptical about the things they find. But it's good viewing. It's good TV.
Yay! So it's my turn to tell you my story. My stomach's going.
I'm very excited about this because
I've been hyping it up.
Yeah, you've been hyping it up to me, saying how excited you are, and I don't think I know this one, so this is going to be very fascinating.
So I'm going to be telling you the story of Moctezuma's treasure.
Ooh.
Commonly referred to as Montezuma, but I'm going to call them Moctezuma.
Okay.
So my story begins with a hero, a treasure-seeking hero, and that hero's name is Freddy Crystal. So already awesome name. So he's
that is an awesome name.
Freddy Crystal.
Freddy Crystal.
He's our hero. Like, he's the one that's going to be... We're going to have him pretty much the whole story.
Freddy Crystal, like, rivals, like, my name.
Yeah, it's right up there. Like, he could have a daughter named Violet Crystal, and he would be just as badass. Like, so he's a weathered prospector.
Ooh.
So he's already a person who's got gold in his heart and eyes.
Knows how to sniff out some treasure.
It's dreams of gold within this man. I'm sort of going to exaggerate Freddy's qualities, because I over the week have, like, created this... Because he doesn't even have his own Wikipedia page.
What?
It's all other things or just to do with the Moctezuma treasure that mention him.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like he deserves his own Wikipedia page. There's a lot of history that just isn't known about him. I was going to do a whole, this was him as a kid. Can't do it. Can't find the information. from a brief scan anyway. A lot of the stuff I'm getting this from is also from the documentary from Myth Hunters episode, Search for Montezuma's Treasures.
Okay.
You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Easy.
And we're calling it Moctezuma?
I'm calling him Moctezuma. That's the proper name.
The proper
he was Moctezuma II.
pronunciation, right?
He's the final ruler of the Aztecs before the conquistadors screwed it all up. This is early 1900s. 1914 is roughly where we're at right now. Vroom, prospector in the Old West.
Okay.
Our hero arrives, well, roughly Old West, sort of toward the teetering end. He arrives at a town named Kanab. It's an isolated religious town in Utah, surrounded by beautiful red canyons. And within its borders, there was the very first, ever, in all recorded history, all-female council.
Ooh.
They call this a petticoat council. I fucking hate that term. So we will not, unless we're going to start calling everything that's male a jockstrap council.
Okay.
I refuse to call it that.
Yeah, that sounds like a very old-fashioned...
It's like... But they use it in every modern article, and women will use it with pride, and I'm just like, that's cool, you do you, girl, but I hate the term petticoat council.
Well, we need some...
What does it have to do with a big skirt, the big hoop thing that makes your ass look bigger? Like, which was designed for the male gaze anyway. Like, anyway, I'm not going to get into a feminist rant. So keep in mind, women's rights wasn't really a thing at this time, so the fact that they have an all-female council is incredible. And they're isolated so they can do that. Fuck everybody else in the country, right? So religion's a huge deal. Every council meeting ends with a prayer, you know. Ladies are keeping it tight and cool. They're all farmers and ranchers pretty much, but there is a town with shops and stuff like that for passerbys and such. So Utah, 1914, right? No one's taking any shit. It's hard living. Everyone's teeth hurts. That's like my gauge in history is how badly teeth hurt, and whether I would go back in that time or not.
Yeah. Are you like in your 30s and you've got one tooth and that's pretty normal?
Yeah, and
are we pulling teeth out with like rudimentary pliers?
Are people pretending that they have the cure to tooth pain when actually they're just dosing you up with heroin and ripping your teeth out?
Yeah.
Okay, so Freddy turns up in this random town based on a vision he has. While prospecting, Freddy had a head injury on the job. So in the vision he has, Freddy sees these Aztec warriors leading a giant procession of slaves carrying gold. They cross the Rio Grande into Texas. You know how in a dream you just know certain things? So he knows they're crossing the Rio Grande. They're into New Mexico, then through to Arizona, then the Colorado River's there, and then boom, they're in Utah. The vision fades. Except for one single image of a petroglyph. So while you may know what a petroglyph is, I'm going to let the listener, in case they don't know, petroglyphs are images, straight from Wikipedia, usually crude or basic in style, created by etching away or removing rock surface, by carving, picking, or abrading, and it's rock art or a myriad of things, but it's old and it's been going on all over the world for as long as humans have been able to graffiti.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's of a certain age, it's not graffiti, it's a petroglyph. So Freddy, in the final part of his vision, sees this petroglyph, and it's so clear he draws it. Obsessed with his vision, he begins to research the Aztec. He reads that a conquistador, Cortez, everyone may or may not know that.
Wikipedia it, if you don't.
There's loads of conquistadors. I can't even begin. The episode's already hench as fuck, so we have condensed. So basically, back in the day, in the 1500s, 1515, somewhere around there, Cortez arrives, and the Aztecs mistake him for their prophesized god, Quetzalcoatl. And all this story I'm about to tell you is what Freddy's researching. It's not what we know today. So it's going to sound a bit far-fetched and not accurate. So at first things go swimmingly. The Aztecs show Cortez and the other captains gold when they're interested. They're like, here's all our gold. And Moctezuma goes in. He's proud to show them. And one of Cortez's men is said to have said, all the riches of the world were to be found in that very room in the treasury. So in reference to the capital city treasury. So eventually the Aztec people began to rebel, seeing the bullshit. So even though Moctezuma is not doing anything according to this legend that he's reading, the people see the Spanish for what they are, cruel invaders, and they start going apeshit. And according to what Freddy reads, the Aztecs before the conquistadors ransacked the city, secreted away the remaining of Moctezuma's treasure, bundling it up and taking it to north via slaves to the old homelands of the Aztec people, the famed Aztlan, which would have been the USA. When the Spanish found the gold gone, they fucking went nuts. They're like, fuck you, and start torturing all the Aztecs to try and find out where this gold was put.
Right.
And not a single Aztec gave up the location of Moctezuma's treasure. With all his reading, Freddy's like, wow, this is amazing. But he's no closer to finding this gold. So he gives up, and then he goes back to his prospecting business. You know, it's like the equivalent of me like doing a quick Google search on it and being like, well, c'est la vie. One fateful day in 1914, however, picks up the local paper after a hard day of prospecting. He sees a picture that stops him in his tracks, and this is how I imagine what happens. So this may or not be. This is how I see it.
What date is this? When
1914.
1914. Okay.
So the same year he turns up in Kanab.
Okay.
Right? But this is the story of why he turns up there. He drops his old pipe, perhaps. Maybe he smokes a bit of the tobacco. His beard jiggles or something. Some lunch crumbs come tumbling down, and he stands up to look at this picture in the paper. A local churchman, Levi E. Young, had gone to Kanab, Utah on some church business. Since he was traveling, he thought he'd take a few pictures of the local area to bring back for the cute local paper as a travel piece. The picture is of a petroglyph. The very same one as in Freddy's vision.
Oh my god.
So Freddy hops on his bicycle and proceeds to bike the 300 miles to Kanab. So he is determined. He's like, he had a vision. He sees this thing in the local paper. It's all coming together.
Matches up. The puzzle pieces are fitting into place.
He is the chosen one.
This is magic.
So he shows up in this town, bicycling. He's a weirdo stranger cycling around the canyons, and no one in the town gives a fuck about this dude. Or his stories of gold as he comes into town, telling all these ranchers, except for one man, another hero of our story, Oscar Robinson of the Robinson Ranch. He takes the poor prospecting Freddy in, and he gets free room and board and food and shit. And he proceeds to spend every day hiking up the canyon searching for this petroglyph, because I guess he didn't ask Mr. Young where it was. So everyone in town thinks he's a weirdo, and they all think he's a bit of a freeloader since he's just shown up.
Yeah.
Is chilling out with Oscar on his ranch and hiking every day.
A bit crazy.
Yeah, he's like the old prospector dude, spinning tales of gold.
Has spent too many days digging for gold in the sun.
Spends a lot of time in the bar, the local bar, and drinking, showing people pictures of this petroglyph. Anyone who will listen, right?
Okay.
One day, 2 years into the fucking search, he's spinning his tail. He shows a man a picture, and fuck, the man recognizes it immediately. He's like, what, you've been searching for this for 2 years? It's only a quarter mile up the road.
Ooh.
But there's a huge problem. He cannot get to the spot anymore because a local farmer who wanted to clear some space for hay straight up blasted that rock with the petroglyph, right? So it's gone.
Damn it.
Fucking Freddy is
so
devastated. He's fucking devastated.
You spent 2 years, wandering around being crazy, everyone hating on you, so you're just like some mad old man.
All the all-women council being like, don't talk to Freddy. He's a fucking nutter. He leaves the town. Just devastated. But that's not the end for Freddy. You'd think it would be, but 6 years later, the townsfolk are going about their business, and then they spot a familiar rickety-crickety old man cycling along the canyons. It's Freddy Crystal.
Freddy Crystal.
He's back, baby. He's more determined than ever, right? So he arrives in town, and he's just ringing the bells. He'll tell anybody. He's here to tell a tale of a single Aztec who was captured, tortured, and gave up a map of the location to the famous Moctezuma gold. So the map shows the treasure location, but in the conquest, it had been lost. And so he tells them all the story of how he got hold of this map.
Okay.
So Freddy went down to to Mexico City for 6 years. Mexico City.
That's Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So Mexico City is the actual spot of the ancient Aztec capital, which is called I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm not even going to attempt it. But the ancient Aztec capital is there. And so basically an archaeologist's nightmare. Because it's all built up over top of the old Aztec temples and everything in this area. He basically finds out from some people down there who claim to be all sorts that the old colonial paperwork's hidden in a monastery. So what's Freddy going to do, Violet? What's he going to do?
He's going to wheel up on his bike.
Is he going to wheel up on his bike and politely ask for the papers? Okay.
I had a bump on the head when I was digging for gold, and saw a vision. I know where the Moctezuma's gold is buried at. I've been cycling around the canyon for 5 years trying to find it. He's got his overgrown beard, his eyebrows have joined up in the middle of his face.
Well, Freddy's going to he's going to one-up you.
My name's Freddy Crystal. Just the name alone.
He's not even going to ask. Freddy Crystal rides up to this monastery in the dead of night, fucking jumps the wall, and breaks into the monastery. And by candlelight,
he's just that crazy now.
He is, after a while of stressful searching, Freddy finds what he's looking for. He finds the fucking map that he's told is going to be in this fucking monastery.
Sweet.
In the map, it has a picture of a canyon cliff with a marsh below, surrounded by 7 mountains. Once he sees it, he is convinced this is Johnson Canyon, where he was.
Okay, the place he was cycling around.
Yeah, he's convinced, because it has similar mountains, it has 7 mountains.
Yeah, it all matches up.
It has a fucking cliff with a marsh below it, with a lake and everything. So Freddy fucking shows back up in town 6 years later, after doing all this research, and 6 years of researching and trying to find this map. And he goes back to his friend Oscar Robinson and stays at the ranch once more. So this time, he's doing the same thing as before every day, hiking out in the canyons, but instead he's got this map to compare the scenery. He's basically trying to pull up this map, make sure it fits from his position, so when he's looking out, it has all the marks.
But it all matches up.
And then he'll go straight to
it's like that moment in the movie where the guy holds up the picture and it pans down and there is...
You're going to realize, and like I did...
and a tree in exactly the right place.
The whole story is basically every movie you've seen.
Yeah, every
movie is stolen from this. Yeah. Why doesn't Freddy Crystal have his own Wikipedia page? Because there's another bit that you're going to be like, what the fuck?
Okay.
He's got this map, he's comparing it, but he also knows in the map there's something that he didn't know before. There's a fucking set of steps that are supposed to... So if they find a set of steps with all this stuff, it leads to the top, and he's convinced that it's at the top. According to the map, there should be a layer mortar, which is not of some kind of mortar.
Oh, so this is
covering a cave entrance. Yeah, it's a cliffside across from the cliff. Yeah,
there's gonna be some stairs leading up to it. This is some Lord of the Rings, Tomb of the Dead people.
Break into the thing
in the middle of the mountain.
Exactly.
And ultimate level treasure
hunting.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet.
It's fucking cool.
Yeah. You go in there, a boulder falls off a trapdoor, and you have to run down the cave system.
Okay. So this time with this map, all of a sudden a bunch of young cowboys are interested. So I need to introduce you to Alvin Judd.
I'm related to the Judds. Ooh. Yeah, there's Judds in my family.
Every day he's hiking, and suddenly he's got Alvin and his buddy. I didn't remember his buddy's name, but Alvin Judd is the main one we're focusing on. He explains to them they're going to find some steps that lead to the cave with sealed mortar. Behind the mortar wall, there will be an army of supposed dead Aztecs, which are waiting and guarding the treasure. He's searching and searching, but this time on Thanksgiving Day in 1922, after his another 2 years goes by of searching, he uses the map wall on a cliff perch, and boom, it all lines up. 7 mountains, cliff, marsh, everything's there. Straight ahead should be this treasure. So he fucking runs. He's booking it with Alvin and his buddy.
Yeah.
They're on horses. He's on a weird rickety bike.
Rickety bicycle.
they're going to that
It's
spot.
like E.T., but with like a weird old man on a bicycle.
So they get to the spot.
Some gullible
guess what they
followers. Okay.
They find a fucking set of steps. So what the fuck? This map from Mexico City,
Freddy Crystal stole from a monastery.
So he goes there. They find some fucking steps, right?
Okay.
They all start grabbing their pocket knives as if possessed by treasure itself. Freddy Crystal beats it, starts grabbing it, and they find a layer of mortar. It's made of limestone, and the nearest limestone source is 20 miles away.
Sweet. So this is a big job. This is a big job.
And it's like somebody's done it.
Yeah.
There's purpose behind it. It's obvious it's not just something.
Thing.
Yeah. People sealed it up.
Yeah.
And took a lot of care. So he digs in and boom, there's the entrance. They get rid of the limestone. There's a small opening. And Freddy climbs in.
Go, Freddy Crystal!
Freddy Crystal! Alright, so Freddy has no time. Okay, so he's nervous. He's going in there. And he knows the stories of the ghostly warriors that are supposed to... So it's all a bunch of stuff. You've been... How many years is he on this? 8 years now? 9, 10 years? It's all leading up to this moment. He goes in. He's nervous. He's excited. He's anxious. He starts to creep in.
This man has been obsessed with this. This man had a bump on the head, an insane vision that has driven him to ride a bicycle around America, being mad, breaking into monasteries,
treasure,
stealing sacred manuscript
moments
maps.
away.
It's all been building up to this for Freddy Crystal, who is destined. I mean, with a name like that, you're going to believe you were destined to strike the big gold one day.
So he goes into the cave, and not within a few feet of the cave, boom. It's like you said, a boulder comes down, a booby trap set off, and his leg is fucking crushed.
They really did. This is where that stereotype comes
from. This is
from.
Everything. This is it all, Violet.
The root of all of it.
And I had no idea.
Wow.
Freddy
Crystal is the OG Tomb Raider.
He is. And luckily, Alvin and his friend are outside. So Freddy's like, help, my leg's crushed. This isn't cool. So they help him out, and they're able to get this boulder off. So it's not like a huge one, but it's like a big enough
to trap your leg.
He's pincered. If he was alone, if he was crazy old man alone, he would have died.
He would have been a creepy skeleton inside the cave.
So, okay.
With the beard still attached to the skull.
They help him out, but now, once he's out and free and he's fine, now they know it's serious business.
Okay. So now they bandaged
They need help.
Freddy Crystal's leg.
He's fine. They're going to take him down this town. He was pincered where he couldn't get out, but he's fine. Right? I just said crushed fist. Dramatic. So they get back to town, and they tell everyone what happened. And everyone goes fucking nuts. Because it's not just Freddy now. It's Alvin Judd of the Judd Ranch. And his friend. And their witness. They bear witness to this. And they're young, respectable cowboys. The whole town is about to shut down.
They're all going to go up there.
They're all going up there. It becomes a tent city. So everyone goes nuts. The female council goes as far as making new laws in the town that if you speak the word treasure, you will be fined. It is tight-lipped in the way only women can keep secrets. They install these fines, town sealed, no one's talking, but everyone is excited. And the deal is that if they help, everyone gets a cut.
Okay.
So despite all these precautions, people were still suspicious. So they made it where some people stayed in the town, would like keep over watch so that passerbys and normal people that come through the town aren't suspicious. So it's quite a suspicious
thing.
It's
how normally you get chaos. If in our town, for example, if someone was like, okay, everybody, we've located a freaking what looks like a giant treasure cave,
which has happened in our place.
It's like, let's everyone go nuts and try and get the treasure for themselves. So you need to immediately come up with some kind of control plan of like, let's get everyone in on this, everyone work together for the good of the community kind of thing. bandage up Freddy Crystal's leg.
Everyone's working together.
Get up that
people have jobs. Like, there's people who are water fetchers. There's people who do food. There's
because
people who do
everyday
laundry.
life has got to go on. People don't want their houses to get looted while they're out, you know.
So there's certain people, like probably I imagine a lot of women and children still in town, but everyone else who can weasel their way up to the tent city is up there.
Yeah.
But even despite all the precautions they took, people are going to notice something shut down. So 2 men from Salt Lake City heard a rumor about the town and rode to Kanab. When they got there, everything was closed. It was a fucking ghost town. Creeped them out. A stable hand pointed them toward the canyon, right where everything was going on. They didn't get far, though. Okay. It's fine. A local saw them, because they have people stationed, and pointed a gun at them, basically threatening them, being like, get out. And so they left.
Okay.
Obviously, you know, that's going to trickle down into more suspicion.
Yeah.
Unless, you know. So when they start digging, and they get, you know, it's months, you get through the next bit of the cave. After a while, they find more cavern and tunnels. So they dig. People are, and this is the time, we had some digging discussion before, where it's crude tools. We don't have big fucking diggers. No. Still early 1900s.
Especially somewhere kind of that seems quite remote like that, out of the way. It was just harder to get.
Yeah. So the town shut down.
The top-notch machinery of the time.
Oh, yeah. No steampunk's going to go to Utah.
A community that, you know, that are just using the basic tools, farming stuff.
Oh, yeah. They're literally using buckets and passing buckets in a line to get rid of dirt and pile it at the bottom.
So really back-breaking, basic situation.
And they're at the top of a cliff, and at the bottom, they're piling all the dirt.
Okay.
People start giving up after a few months because they keep getting through entrances and it's a tunnel system. But there's like hope still. So there's still a real major contingency of treasure seekers, and the rest have gone back to their normal lives. So the town is no longer really suspicious at that point because most people are back in town except for a hardcore group of, I don't know, approximately like 30 or so people, we'll guess. Still a chunk of people. After 2 years of digging, they were close to the last cavern. They finally break through the wall. And there it was. Moctezuma's treasure? Or was it just an old moccasin? And reports, this is even confirmed, reports of a Spanish helmet. But there was not any gold. It's completely empty. Freddy Crystal had spent 10 years...
Freddy Crystal who'd been there like, I told you, I found the cave.
2 years of townspeople digging.
People patting him on the back. Finally, he was accepted as the clever old man who'd had the vision, and he'd been... all his crazy ideas have been proven true, and now it's crushed.
It's fucked. 10 years. He doesn't give up that he has another look at the map. Suddenly it dawns on him. He starts to believe the tunnels were a temporary holding of the treasure. He knew where they needed to look. It was at the bottom of the cliff, where they had just put 2 years worth of fucking cave and dirt.
Oh no.
He tells the town people, gathers them round. Look, I know where it is now. I know you spent 2 years looking, but for sure, it's at the bottom where we just put all that shit. So
sorry, maybe I was wrong about getting yours excited about the cave at the top of the cliff where you've been bugging in dirt for 2 years.
The town people are not having it. They're fucking angry. They were not happy. They just waited 2 years to be told to move that pile of dirt that they just dug up. They stopped caring. In 1924, the dig is completely abandoned. Freddy disappears. He's gone.
Freddy.
The rumors, which are usually true, when I've looked a lot of history stories, like usually a lot of rumors, if they're not too fantastical, if they're grounded in most likely, they're usually true.
There's often a grain of truth, you know, somewhere.
Well, the rumors are that the townsfolk got angry and somebody murdered him for either wasting their time or to steal his map or blah, 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 blah. But he gets murdered. Like, the idea is that he gets murdered.
Someone did away
with
gone.
Freddy
Crystal.
The bike's gone.
He disappears.
He's disappeared.
The bike is just there with the wheels still spinning.
Or is it alone. Great shame and he leaves in the middle of the night and leaves, but there's no historical record of him after that ending up anywhere else telling stories, and he's got a big mouth. And we know Freddy. He's not one to give up. He would have kept digging if he was allowed.
Around,
he would have been like
dragging his lame leg up around the cliff.
One person still continues the search.
Okay.
Alvin Judd.
Alvin Judd.
So Alvin Judd's our final hero now.
Okay.
Like he's the one we gotta bank on.
He
right
takes
now.
on the.
He's still believed. So he spends the rest of his life digging around the canyons with his brothers. 30 years, at least, according to his grandson, who I saw in an interview in this documentary, who was already old by the time he was interviewed. They never found the gold.
Okay.
Nearly 70 years later, to the date that Freddy originally showed up in the town with eyes full of treasure, another stranger arrives in Kanab. So this is like late 70s, early 80s. His name's Raymond Dillman. He shows up at Orinell Judd's ranch. Old Lady Orinell is Alvin's descendant.
Okay.
It's like her great grand something.
Okay.
She's alone at home. And this is where the documentary took a weird turn because they made a big deal about how Spanish looking they were.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, luckily she had the dogs. Even though the dogs don't bite, they were giving them a good show. So it's really weird, problematically so.
Okay, very problematic.
So I just, if you do watch that documentary, tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels weird. Like the way she goes, it's like something like, you know, when a family tells a story amongst themselves for a few years, and it's sort of like they think it's cute, but then they tell somebody outside the family. That's what it was like. It was just like these Spanish and they were huge Spanish men. I was like, so like, and they show up in a van. Anyway, they show up in a van.
Problematic.
She's alone.
A problematic telling.
Yes.
Okay.
So she's, and I have to use her account.
Yeah,
so.
Of course, yeah.
So she's alone, and she goes up to them after she summons her bravery to see what these people, because they're just sat there in a van chilling, looking at the canyons. She goes up to the thing, and Raymond Dillman's inside. Raymond Dillman is inside. The least scary name. Okay, so he tells her he's looking for some hieroglyphics, he says to her. She points behind the house and goes, oh, there's a bunch over there. You know, they're all around the canyons.
Okay.
Dillman's looking for a particular set, though, with 3 animals, indistinguishable animals, sort of like above 3 circles. And she goes, oh, yeah, we've got that right behind the house. So she shows it to him. He goes, yeah, but I need one more. Do you have a big bullseye nearby? And she goes, well, yeah, that's just right over here. And she shows him that spot. Raymond told her that the Moctezuma treasure is buried behind her property. Right on her property.
Wow.
Orinell Judd is part of the Judd family. The only people who took Billy Crystal, you know, them and the Robinsons.
Seriously, the followers
the
of
2
Freddy
families.
Crystal.
Orinell Judd, I love that name, Orinell. She's eager. And of all the townsfolk, the Judds are particularly intertwined. She grew up with these stories of Alvin searching for the treasure and believing in it. And of course, they're going to help continue the saga. Raymond has these tablets, and I didn't look up the tablets in particular, but he claimed Aztec and Native American ancestry, so he could decipher the symbols on these special stones.
Right.
The stone map was good enough for the Judds, so they got some modern digging equipment, an excavator. So they moved 50 times the dirt that the original town did in 2 years in a few days.
Wow.
So the ground below the bullseye was completely exposed. They found something, but it wasn't treasure. They found bones.
Ooh-wee.
On the ledge, a small object fell toward them as they excavated. A tiny pot. Inside was 230 turquoise beads. They suddenly felt like they were close. They also found a suspiciously man-sized slab with a strange natural drain toward the edge of the cliff. And I don't know about you, but there's a lot of stories of Aztec culture being around some human sacrifice stuff. So whether it's true or not, as far as this stuff, they get excited because they think that's what it is.
Yeah, they're putting 2 and 2 together about what they know about that culture.
You know what they think they found? They think they found the execution site for the slaves that carried the gold and the warriors that would be executed, blood ritualized into the caves, and they found their bones. When they continued to dig, they found flat stones covering tunnel entrances. Behind these slabs were more bodies. Now, I've seen a clip of sweet Orinell Judd, who's like at least 70, with white hair, blue knuckles, carrying a human skull casually out of the just like, oh, what what we got here? Like,
Yeah.
but in an old lady American accent from Utah. I don't know why I always do old lady in like really bad.
Well, that's the go-to accent in Britain. You can do old lady.
After they continue to dig, they find more skeletons, and this is a time of early carbon dating. So they revealed this skeletons were disappointingly from 2000 BC, so a little bit before. So it predated Moctezuma by 3,500 years.
Wow, that's a lot.
So this is Aztlan stuff.
Okay.
It must be.
Yeah.
They stopped digging, but the Judd brothers still believe the treasure is out there in Kanab. Bruce Judd, in a recent interview, claims to know where it is. He was very smug in the interview, but says that the curse will kill you, and the local, quote, this is quotes, the local old Indians came back to him and said that it was not yet time. So this did not deter a friend of the Judds, Brant Child, our new hero, who believed the treasure was actually hidden in the lake north Kanab. He believed the Aztecs went there after they were driven away by the Spanish. Now keep in mind, this in the real story of how it went down, there was not Moctezuma, but one of the tribal leaders, one of the other leaders, put some gold in the lake and hid it in the lake. So this is where he comes from with it. So he reckons they came back to their original homeland and hid the treasure so no one would get it in the lake. Brant got divers in to explore. However, there was constant problems for the divers. They came down with something like $100,000 worth of equipment, and it kept breaking. Like, bad thing. One diver went in with normal working equipment, and for some reason her air was turned off, and she had to turn back. And she didn't know how it happened. But that's not the worst of it. Trained professional divers, they got a lot of people in there, kept saying they could see ghostly figures. One of the quotes from the guys, you could hear the man say, "What's happening? There's ghosts around me. It's choking me. It's choking me." One of the divers who said he'd been diving for 30 years, he says, this is a quote from Tony Thurber. "I've been diving all over the world. I never had an experience as scary as this one was." So this is something coming out of all the divers as they come out.
Yeah, divers have to be brave because you'd be swimming with
you
sharks,
have to stay,
eels.
you can't be panicked.
Chill. I mean, I wonder, is it possible to, like, I don't know, like,
some kind of
hallucinate because of something in
that's
the
what
water,
I was thinking. Maybe there's
like,
some kind of water
in the air or something. I don't know, like,
maybe their oxygen was the wrong mix or something, or
that's the only like rational explanation. Or like, does something happen to your brain in certain conditions when you're diving that could make you?
And they kept hiring new people, and the equipment would break down. They were having propane leaks.
So it's like a haunted lake.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
A cursed lake.
So they thought of a new idea. Brant is not a dummy. He's like, let's drain the lake.
Draining the lake.
That's the next idea.
Wow.
And the government, of course, is like, no. This is when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department comes in, because there is a critically endangered subspecies called an amber snail that if they kill one, they will fine them $50,000. And it is swimming in these snails from the Aztecs. It's an Aztec snail that they used in rituals.
Ooh.
So some believe these are mini snail Aztec warriors who are protecting the treasure below. And so they are essentially the army reborn as endangered snails. And also one of the diggers claims to have seen a visage of an, quote, old Indian man looking disapprovingly on the dives. Eventually, sorry, this is all from this like outdated thing.
We're in these old stories.
People, though.
We're always going to encounter these slightly problematic things, but there we go.
Okay, so eventually they break through the cavern. They pull the drill bit up one day, and there are flecks of gold on the drill. On the drill bit. They put a camera on it and lowered it, and they claim, in a similar situation to your Oak Island, they claim to have seen some kind of human figure, not just a statue. They describe it as a human figure.
Okay.
And a pile of something in the middle of this vast room. They also see this image of someone standing. So they reckon it's either statue but they think it's like someone properly standing. So they're getting confused. So it might be like someone, an old decrepit skeleton in armor or something. But something standing is peculiar because, I don't know, it doesn't seem like something should be standing. Unfortunately, the well driller that night went home and died of a heart attack. 2 weeks later, his wife dies. His brother, to this day, has not retrieved the drilling rig. Later down the line, Brant was visited by, quote, an Indian old man who told him the treasure was there, but it would only be used years later to unite the, quote, Indian tribes. They followed the tracks of this man, but they disappeared after a while. Everyone agrees now, around Kanab, that the land is protected, or the treasure is protected, but they do believe the Moctezuma's treasure is there somewhere, but it's protected, and they've given up out of respect. Yeah, it's basically like too difficult terrain. And that's the story of the supposed Moctezuma's treasure in Utah so far. But what I will tell you is, I haven't looked up the YouTube thing. I'll try to add it in our social media. There's a man who's done all the reading. Those quotes by the young lad who said, "There's not a treasure like it." Those all come from real books of accounts of what the conquistadors were doing. There's real accounts. I'm going to sadly just say now that based on this guy's YouTube video, this is breakdown analysis, he read all the books thoroughly. He basically points out the line in the book where it says, where it shows all the lines in the book where the Spanish were given all the gold. Yeah. They were given it. And the gold was in circulation within a few months of the Spanish being there because they were locally buying women, buying food, buying drugs, buying everything locally while they're all conquering. And that there was no secreted away treasure, that it was most likely that Cortez himself had his own bits and pieces that he kept. And there's a lot to it, so I would recommend, again, do your own research, check it out. But there's this whole cool YouTube video, this mad researcher dude, who shows you line by line what really happened to Moctezuma's treasure.
Wow, what a fascinating story. But, and like so many parallels between
Oak Island,
like drills and gold and breaking through walls into the caves and digging stuff, and such a character in Freddy Crystal.
I love Freddy Crystal. He deserves his own wiki page, and I wish I knew more about him and his character before he just shows up in Kanab, because that's the only quote, history of him. There's nothing before and nothing that I could find after. There could be some biographers out there, but God, did he die? Did he keep searching and maybe people stopped caring and were so angry they ignored him for a bit, and then he died, maybe got into another boulder incident on his own, or but Alvin really believed him. Maybe Alvin killed him for his treasure map, maybe, and the Judds are hiding a dark secret.
They need to make a film about it. It's got everything.
Why hasn't there been
It's got
one?
Everything. It's got the boulder, it's got
an old prospector telling stories.
Sacrifice, crazy old prospector. I mean, this is the thing, is like, what is the verdict on Freddy Crystal?
Well, here's
because it just sounds like it's like very much on the fence. Like,
I love him. I
believe
believe him.
That's gone crazy because he had a head bump and just like become obsessed with this vision that he saw, or just some dude spouting a lot of nonsense and a crazy idea that he's obsessed with. But then there are people who really have had those kind of experiences that
and then it turns out
woken up one day with like an insane goal, or woke up with a genius idea, or realized something, or come to some kind of answer, and become obsessed with it, and they've been proven true. It does happen, and maybe Freddy Crystal was one of those people. And the problem with the Kanab is, let's say that the researchers are wrong, and maybe Moctezuma's treasure is secreted away somewhere in Aztlan, somewhere in the U.S., even somewhere in Kanab. There are hundreds of petroglyphs, and there are so many canyons. So it's an impossible task, and that's why Freddy was obsessed with getting those clues to be able to give him an easier time, because the land is so old, and humans have been around a lot longer than we care to admit sometimes. Yeah. So of course there's going to be like insane burial stuff. This is what you want to know, is like, what were the like indigenous people in the area? What did they know about the area? Where were like weird landmarks or things where was the folklore coming from of like such and such happened?
Gosh, if only they hadn't murdered them all.
What information has been lost, because surely like indigenous people must have had some... Oh yeah, someone had some very old knowledge about the area. If something like that happened, if this like treasure had been hidden, someone would have noticed a freaking sneaky load of Aztecs carrying
and it's not like they would be the only people in Aztlan. It's not like all the people left. I think people have this idea of black and white. No, like, people would stay behind. People are
moving around all the time.
Yeah, but, like, I don't know.
There's there are a lot of people that move around that have temporary settlements, seasonal
and if you felt like you had a good thing, maybe you wouldn't go.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating because so much of it, I wanted to go into the real history of the Aztecs, but that has to be its own thing because it is so crazy.
There's only so much we can fit into a story. So. And
this one's already a crazy episode. We might split her up into 2 parts. We don't know yet, but it's been insane. But like, do you believe Freddy? I like him.
I'm on the fence. This thing, he could be crazy old dude who bumped his head one day, or spent too many days digging
Felt
for
like
gold
he wasted his
in
life.
the hot sun, and then just like moves to some town and becomes the local crazy dude who gets drunk and tells everyone he's had these visions of treasure. You know, maybe he just wanted some attention. Maybe he just wanted someone to love him and pay attention.
Well, he was
to
a
him.
freeloader as well. It's not like he came in there paying people.
It could have all been nonsense. Then again, he really could be this magical treasure movie character who actually knew what he was on about. He was on to it. The vision was real.
It's just maybe the treasure was long gone by then. Maybe the only reason why it was empty is because someone had come in before and then resealed it.
Just like what I feel about
a
Oak
single
Island.
Someone's
helmet already gotten there.
Because there was a moccasin for sure, according to reports.
Again, it's like, how do you do something so big? How do you hide a ton of treasure in a complex, fairly difficult to get to situation or location?
Yeah. And when I play MMOs, if I hide something, people are going to find it.
Yeah. Unless it's only a couple of people and you are very trusted, or you just kill everyone afterwards. Yeah. I mean...
And I think their excuse of saying, it could have gone that far and stuff, and without witnesses, their excuse is, they're a bloodthirsty people. They don't mind sacrificing their people to get the job done. But from all accounts I read, Moctezuma was more than happy to give everybody gold. They didn't care. They thought they were gods. And Moctezuma was like, when he realized what the Spanish were, he was like, oh shit, we're going to get conquered. So the best I can do is make buddies and try and, I don't know what his motivations were. I'm not Moctezuma. If you know, let me know, because I would definitely want to do a future episode just on not that we're a history podcast, but there's a lot of weird stuff there as well.
We're about extraordinary stories, extraordinary lives. It all
sort of is under the umbrella.
Exactly.
The Aztecs are some of my favorite stories. Like, what's that movie with Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz? And it's all about the Tree of Life, Yggdrasil, but it's mixed in with the Aztecs. It is the closest thing you will get to a Freddy Crystal movie. It's not really about him, but there's elements of that Aztecness and
the Cloud Atlas thing. No,
it kind of has that feel. I can't remember the name of it.
It's something along those lines.
It's intense. I saw it in the theater twice. I loved it. But yeah, that's my fucking story. Freddy Crystal.
I'm saying, if you're gonna hide treasure, don't do some big elaborate crazy plan. Don't get tons of people involved, because someone will spread word. Someone you can't trust.
Takes that one
many
stable
people.
boy. One stable boy to point toward the canyon.
Exactly. Be more sneaky and get in, get out.
There is a guy from New Mexico, which is why I kept getting confused, who was a millionaire who hid a bunch of treasure supposedly at 80. That a bunch of people in America have already died trying to get to. It's up in the mountains somewhere, like across the Canadian border. I can't remember specifically where, but he said he buried a bunch of gold and treasure.
I love eccentric, wealthy people.
And he said to do it because he was sick of people playing video games and he wanted people to get out there. And I was like, the advice currently, though, if you're going to seek this treasure, is to check places maybe an 80-year-old man could reach. You do not do what some people have done and tragically fall to your death. That's my advice for me.
Take the Zimmer frame.
As I was reading these tragic things, I was like thinking to myself that, and then the article went ahead and said it, and I was like, oh, thank goodness you said that, because it was the elephant in the room. That people need to maybe start low. Maybe don't try to fly from the roof.
Maybe it's hidden in plain sight.
Maybe it's in a tree hollow.
It's something simple. Maybe where you'd never expect.
You know what my theory, though, is that because he's that much of an asshole that he's decided to get people out of the house, rather than starting a charity. He's decided, I'm going to hide treasure. There is no treasure. He's just said there is, so people go out forever and they never find it. So people, because he said there's loads of treasure. So that's his way of covering his bases so that people can't just say, oh, you know what I'm saying? Is it but if someone finds anything at this point, it can be attributed to him. It just annoys me. Fuck you, millionaire. Give me the money.
This is what you want. Don't leave your money to like a sanctuary or
don't.
charity. Leave it as some sort of crazy treasure setup situation, a massive international treasure hunt.
So people die doing it.
Yeah.
God, he's caused, like, it has quite the death list, his treasure. I was going to do it, but it was too depressing to research.
Oof.
I was just like, oh, this sounds funny. An old man eccentrically. Oh, no, that guy's a father of two. Like, it was horrible. People on vacation for funsies. And it's just like, oh, be safe. Freddy.
Freddy Crystal. Okay, well, there you have it. Huge treasure stories that we very bravely have taken on, full of fascinating stuff. So many parallels between them. Thanks for tuning in to World Weary today. Is there anything you want to mention as we say goodbye?
Email us at worldwearypodcast@gmail.com with all your stories. If you fucking found treasure, please, I'm begging you, email me. I want to know. Was it a map? Check out our Insta. We're going to have a website. Follow our shit. We're going to be on Twitter at WorldWearyPod. Let us know if you have ideas for future episodes.
Send it to us all. Once again, it's been very therapeutic.
Oh, this has been nice, yeah.
For me to chat about these stories. It's really good to... I think what we're trying to get across, having done our first kind of bunch of episodes now, is how good it is to have a space to tell these kinds of stories and sort of speculate about the extraordinary and sometimes mysteries, sometimes the paranormal, the supernatural, to speculate about these kind of things without worrying about being shut down.
Yeah.
Or having to overly censor ourselves because we're worried about coming off as too extreme one way or another, you know, being labelled as slightly mentally unstable maybe, or stupid or gullible for questioning or entertaining these ideas. I mean, it's just an awful thing when you can't... You
close the door to possibility.
We're trying to be open-minded about it. And we really are being very honest, I think, with our opinions on these stories.
Yeah.
You know, we are sceptical about certain things, but we are also very open-minded, and it comes down to what makes sense to us.
Yeah.
And what we honestly feel and think. And of course, we also want to share with you what we find exciting and interesting and entertaining about these stories.
Yeah.
As always, feel free to email us stories or comments. The email address is
worldwearypodcast@gmail.com.
Maybe you have a treasure story. Did you find something cool in your attic? Maybe you dug up a golden coin in your garden. Maybe you pulled Viking sword out of a lake like that little girl did last year. Oh my god, did you not see that? It was like one of the best bits of news. I think it was last year, like in the autumn or summer or something.
That's crazy.
This little girl in I want to say Sweden or Norway. I can't remember. One of those countries, she literally was in like a lake with her dad and just like pulled a Viking sword out.
She's the chosen one.
She absolutely is She-Ra. Maybe you're a pirate and you buried treasure on a little island and now you can't remember where you hid it.
Maybe you're Freddy Crystal's long lost niece.
Absolutely. Maybe you're part of the Freddy Crystal fan club. Let us know. Get in touch. We love feedback. Remember, if this episode has inspired you to go out treasure hunting, that you do so responsibly and safely. If you're hunting with a metal detector or whatever, follow the laws. Get the landowner's permission, don't destroy the archaeology, etc. So yeah, you should be able to find everything about us on Twitter at WorldWearyPod, Instagram at WorldWearyPodcast, and by the time this launches, we should hopefully have a website live too. We're working on that. So we will let you know details on where to find that and everything about us. So as always, thanks so much for listening. We hope you feel a little less world weary.
Yeah.
And until next week, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.